The Prime Minister's Chief of Staff, Katie Telford, ended an opposition showdown, agreeing to testify at the government-chaired House committee investigating elections interference right before MPs were set to vote on a motion that would have forced her before an opposition-dominated committee. Here to help unpack all of that, and it certainly is a lot, Intergovernmental Affairs Minister Dominic LeBlanc. Minister, good to have you on the program. Thanks for making the time.
Hi, Vassy. Good evening.
Let's start on the mandate portion of this, because I feel like part of it is really clear to determine whether or not there's going to be an inquiry. And then beyond that, you're supposed to, Mr. Johnston is supposed to assess, I don't know exactly what. Can you describe very succinctly what he is going to figure out by October 31st?
Sure. So the first part, as you say, is an inquiry, but there's a public inquiry in the traditional context of a public inquiry, or there's potentially some other mechanism that would bring transparency and reassurance to Canadians. So he has a wide mandate to give advice on what would be the next steps, as you said, by the end of May, and the Prime Minister is committed to follow that advice. And then the rest of his work will focus on the measures that are in place now, that we put in place since the election of 2015. Senior public servants during an election period, a panel, for example, that reviews with national security agencies any potential foreign interference, the National Security Committee of Parliamentarians that looks at classified information, all political parties in that particular structure. So he'll have a chance to look at the existing structures and offer advice on what additional steps might be appropriate. Are there things that need to be strengthened in the existing structures? Are there additional things that should be put in place? So it's sort of a broader review of what exists now.
And what more you can do?
And what more could the government do to strengthen what's already in place?
So to be clear then, I know that the Prime Minister has been unequivocal. If there is a recommendation to have an inquiry, that is binding. Are all the other recommendations that that Mr. Johnston will come forth with on what you described, on the other stuff you just described, are they all binding as well?
Well, the government will want to follow Mr. Johnston's advice, of course. We've asked him.
Will it, though?
Sure,
okay.
Absolutely.
So it is binding. So you will.
Binding, you ask a special rapporteur to do this review and provide advice to the government in a transparent way. That advice will be shared with opposition party leaders and Canadians, and the government's committed to following the advice of Mr. Johnston.
I ask, not sort of flippantly, I ask because I'm thinking back to NSICOP, the committee that initially your government said is the right venue to look into all of this. That's the National Security and Intelligence Committee of Parliamentarians. And they have done extensive reviews, actually, of the foreign interference apparatus, how the government is doing to combat it. And actually, their conclusion they reached back in 2019 was not a great job. And there's a lot of other stuff. There's a lot of other things that the government can do. They came up with a list of recommendations, 7 in total. The Prime Minister has even admitted himself that your government hasn't followed through on that. So I just want to make sure for Canadians that this time around is different, that the effort and the time that Mr. Johnston puts in is not for naught, as has been the case with NSICOP.
Well, I obviously wouldn't agree that all of the advice provided by the Security Committee of Parliamentarians hasn't been followed. We've implemented a number of measures, including reviews, for example, that were done by Jim Judd or Maurice Rosenberg after the 2019 and 2021 elections. The Prime Minister's asked me and the Clerk of the Privy Council, as part of the appointment of Mr. Johnston, or in the same context, to provide him within the next couple of weeks of advice on what exactly in previous reports, including, to your point, the National Security Committee of Parliamentarians, what advice the government had and what we need to do to implement that advice. So we're working on a whole number of fronts in a very, we think, robust and transparent way. There's no doubt that Mr. Johnston's work, we believe, will be the best and most effective way to reassure Canadians that the mechanisms that are in place now have worked well in 2019 and 2021. We believe the independent advice of senior public servants that those elections were free and fair in every constituency. But if Mr. Johnston offers advice on further and additional measures, we will obviously want to follow up on that advice.
What I'm challenging on, though, is the idea that it is also robust, right? That everything that you've done so far is robust enough. Because, for example, on those committees, Maurice Rosenberg, who you point to, reviewed the work of them. I interviewed him. He pointed out that the allegations that have come forth through the media in the past month were not part of his review at all. So it was not the final word, is actually exactly what he said. And on the NSICOP recommendations, they were very specific in 2019 to foreign interference. I looked through them. I can't find one that your government has followed through on.
But, Vassy, when we came to government in 2015, there was absolutely no mechanism to ensure that there was a transparent and open way to ensure that there was no foreign interference, and not only from China, but other countries and other democracies like Canada are subject to these attempts at interference. So we put together in 2019 a series of measures. We strengthened them again in 2021. This is an evolving threat to many Western democracies, including Canada. We don't think, we're never going to get to the final answer. What we need to do is incrementally strengthen the measures that we've put in place that we believe were effective in 2019 and 2021.
Is incremental enough, though? Given the nature of the threat, is incremental enough?
Incremental for me means we add to the already robust measures in place. If Mr. Johnston
But you're not even following the measures, the recommendations from those, some of the bodies that you're pointing to. You're saying NSICOP is part of what makes this suite of measures so robust, but they make recommendations about how to deal with foreign interference, and your government didn't follow them.
But, Vassy, our government has acted from the very beginning in a transparent way to put in place a series of measures that the clerk of the Privy Council and senior deputy ministers responsible for intelligence agencies have confirmed made the 2021 and the 2019 elections free and fair, that attempts at foreign interference did not affect the results in the constituencies across the country and the result of the election. So that for us is a confirmation that we put in place, we think, serious and robust measures, but we have evolved those measures to the threat that also evolves and to the attempts of a number of countries to interfere in our democracy and in other partner like-minded countries. We'll continue to do that work, and Mr. Johnston is an important part of that process.
I've got 30 seconds left. I got to ask you about the Prime Minister's Chief of Staff. I listened, and some Canadians did as well, to what happened with Liberals filibustering and postponing making a decision, basically, on Katie Telford. They were fighting against the Prime Minister's Chief of Staff coming before that committee. All of a sudden, we wake up this morning, and the government has completely changed its mind. What was the point of what happened there?
Well, the point is the parliamentary committees, and I was at the committee with the Foreign Affairs Minister when a Conservative MP in a rather unpleasant way insulted her. The Conservatives at those committees, Vassy, are not interested in getting any kind of rational conversation with Canadians about foreign interference or the appropriate measures. They're looking for partisan stunts. Calling political staff to committees is something that in our system is very unusual. Ministers are accountable.
I get all of that, but then why fold today?
Because at the end of the day, Vassy, if it's going to allow Parliament to function better, Ms. Telford will go and answer questions that will be put to her. Hopefully they won't be as insulting and as demeaning as they were when Mélanie Joly was there with me a few weeks ago. A number of the questions that Conservatives pretend to want to ask her, they know very well are protected by national security information. So again, it's a partisan theater and stunt that Conservatives have been trying to put together. At the end of the day, we want Parliament to function well. We think the better and more effective way to get answers that Canadians rightfully expect and the transparency that they deserve is to let Mr. Johnston do his work. That will be the proof point in terms of the government's efforts to counter foreign interference.
Okay, I feel like I have so many more questions, but I'm out of time.
Maybe you'll invite me back again.
Probably, I'm sure.
So.
I appreciate you making the time, Minister.
I hope
Thank
so.
you.
Thank you,
Intergovernmental Affairs Minister Dominic LeBlanc.